another one from abroad, Mr. Andy Hicks. Welcome.
Thank you.
Please, he's the Director of IDC Research, Telecoms and Networking, CEMA.
Hello, I'm going to show you three things today. It'll be a short talk. I want to tell you about the disruption that's coming up, we believe, and that's already starting in the ICT world. And the message behind that is, we've already heard some today about the need to catch up or the need not to fall farther behind. Disruptions create opportunity, but they also create the possibility that certain market players will be kicked out of the market. So I want to go into that in some depth. Afterwards, what we're going to talk about is 4 data points from recent survey data we have from Western Europe, so we can get a better sense of what your peers are doing, specifically in the area of mobility. And then lastly, I want to give you a very specific case study about a very specific decision that was made by a European company and the broader implications I think it might have for the way that we provide ICT services in the continent. Oh, clicker right here, sorry. So if you've worked with IDC in some capacity, and many of you have, you've seen a version of this slide, but let me make sure that I go over the details. We think right now we're just starting a transition to a new paradigm of ICT provisioning and service and consumption. And let me go through the first two paradigms that we were living in so you can get a chance to understand what we were building on. This is not something that's replacing what went before, it's something that builds on top of it. The first platform was something that if you're of a certain age, you remember using. It was quite a while now. We believe that the first platform of ICT was the mainframe model, mainframe with terminals. And in terms of scale, there's a reason that it's the smallest. There were probably on the order of hundreds of thousands of users and hundreds, maybe thousands of applications. And they were used almost exclusively by academia, governments, and corporations to improve their own operations. Then, and we can all remember this, we got to the internet paradigm. Networked computers connected by either a local area network or wide area networks, the most famous one of which is obviously the internet. And it was a client-server model. And usage exploded. We got up to billions of users and hundreds of thousands, let's say, of applications. And that has served us well and still continues to serve us well. However, we're seeing a third paradigm that's coming out now that we have to make sure that we transition to, and there are 4 main pillars of that. There's mobility, there's social business and collaboration, there's the cloud, broadly defined, and there's big data and analytics. Now, some of this is probably completely natural to you. We all have smartphones, we're all using mobility, we're accessing not only consumer services, but often enterprise information and enterprise functions. Social business comes from the consumer model. It comes a lot from things like Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. Unified communications is something that we talk about there. Then a little bit farther back is the cloud. The cloud enables all of this. The services that we're consuming in these paradigms and that we're contributing to in terms of content and functionality is enabled by the cloud. Not only in the sense of reliability and scalability and the virtualization that enables that, as well as hopefully some sort of cost benefit, but in terms of consumption models, right? We want to pay for what we use. We're more interested in that than a subscription service. We want capacity to be able to burst when we need it. We want it there when it's absolutely essential, and so on. And then finally, analytics. Analytics is important because it gets you the information that you need where you need it. It determines who might need that capability and when they might need it and where they might need it. But it also helps us run the third platform. Because the part of it that I haven't mentioned yet, and I will now, is that the number of applications and the number of users explodes. We're talking billions upon billions of users. In fact, more users than we have people, because the third platform now is connecting things as well as people. It's the internet of machines, it's the internet of walls and bridges and electrical meters and physical security and everything else that you can think of. And the number of applications that need to be developed here are in the order of millions. It's too much complexity for people to manage anymore. So a big part of automation is going to come from precisely this big data and analytics component. We need the third platform to be self-administering and self-managing to a significant degree, and analytics will help us with that. Now, you see above there, you see some industry solutions. Let's not forget that any horizontal platform requires verticalization. It requires a significant amount of building on top in order to be able to meet the specific business needs of a specific industry. Whether that's retail, which isn't an industry, but it's a certain use case, whether it's transportation, whether it's manufacturing, and so on and so forth. So the third platform creates for you a lot of opportunity to go out and enable specific businesses and specific business verticals to serve their employees better and serve their customers better. Now, we've been talking a lot so far in these keynotes about the network, and I guess I should say about networks in general, because there are certainly going to be several types of them. Networks are absolutely critical to this process. First of all, networks obviously hold everything together. They hold together the technologies, they hold together the users, and they're the platform across which the policies and the content is delivered. Secondly, we at IDC believe that if you take the long view, a minimum of a decade, you're going to start realizing that there is increasingly vanishing difference between the network and the data center. The two platforms that we think of as very separate, and we have separate people usually in most of our companies that deal with this, are going to start to merge. And you can think of it how you want. You can think of it as the data center controlling the network in the way that it does many IT functions today. Or you can think of it as the data center being distributed throughout the network, in that it almost ceases to exist eventually as a separate building, as a separate area of concentration. Every network node, we believe, in the next 10 to 15 years, let's say out to 15, is going to be a data center node as well. And that's going to have significant implications for how we receive our services and how we can move our workloads around the network to best serve our customers. So going on to one aspect of this, because we only have so long, let's talk a little bit about mobility and see where the market is going. This is very recent survey data that came back last month, where we polled 7 large technologically advanced economies in Western Europe. And I wanted to point out that when you're thinking about how you're developing your services and how you want to deliver them to your customers, think about mobile, because mobile first is already a paradigm in certain parts of the world. Parts of the world that look more like emerging markets are already mobile first economies. And we're becoming an economy overall in Europe that will have at least mobile on parity with fixed line networks. So take a look at this. Your colleagues in the IT industry in Western Europe say that 69% of them say that mobility is either a high priority or essential. Those are the 2 top categories. 46.5% of them say that they're going to be spending more on mobility, broadly defined, in the next 2 years. And this last one is interesting because those of you who work in the IT departments need to understand that lines of business, people that are operating your products and planning your marketing and so on, are going to become budget stakeholders and product stakeholders and IT stakeholders with you today. Take a look at these figures. It's neck and neck. 40.2% use only the IT department to construct their mobility initiatives, whereas 39.5% trust a coalition of the line of business with IT. That number continues to move up, that second number. The next time you hear these statistics from IDC, I'm firmly convinced that it will be over IT only. We need to take our line of business into account, and we need to make sure that all the stakeholders are heard from. Because if you're in IT, or you have IT people in your organization, then I guarantee that you also have people complaining about them. People are going to go to the CEO or go to another senior member of the organization and say, I want to do more, but IT is holding me back. And so what often happens is we get the shadow IT effect, right? They go outside the organization to some sort of cloud service or some sort of independent vendor, and they say, can you help me do this now? I need this to enable my customers, and I need this to enable my employees. They don't think of it as going around you. They think of it as getting the job done. So we need to make sure that when we're building up our capabilities and our organizations and our processes, that IT works along with business to get the business job done. And finally, let's talk about enabling the customer a little bit. This is a very specific use case. I live in the Czech Republic. I'm in the Prague office of IDC, and this is Czech Railways, which I take every day to work. And recently, I was talking to the CIO of Czech Railways, and she said something which I've heard from a lot of people and which we see in our research. The new budget, the new initiatives that are coming in companies in terms of ICT spending are more on the customer side than on the employee side. Employee mobility is important, enterprise mobility is important, but we find that people are starting to think about ways that they can enable their customers to make better use of their services, to get better idea of their content, to get their brand experience. Whatever your specific role is, whatever your specific product is in your own organization, customer mobility is the trend that we're really seeing now. So let's take 2 minutes to look at what Czech Railways is doing. The picture in the middle is the average equipment of the conductor, the person who comes by on the train and checks your ticket and charges you something if you want to go somewhere else, and so on and so forth. It's dedicated, it's specialized, as you can tell, it's heavy. Czech Railways then decided that they needed to get more information about train status and connection status to its employees, and then they decided, wait a minute, why are we only giving this to our employees? Why don't we just roll this out to our customers instead? So they abandoned this platform for new work, and instead what they're doing is they're targeting consumer devices with precisely that information. Is my train late? If so, how does that affect my connection? And as long as they're giving that information to the customer, why not enable them to buy their ticket directly and display that as a barcode, that's the bottom right there, which can be read by the legacy dedicated technology that the conductors are using. If you're enabling your customers instead of your employees, you're doing a few things that will help you with everyone in the long run. First of all, you're making an interface that everyone can understand. You don't need to have the complicated, dedicated device that requires training. You can get something that follows existing models of application development that people have through their Android phones, through their iPhones. There's lots of examples out there. Everyone can use this. Every customer can use this. Second, you're making sure that your back-end systems are robust enough to handle large-scale usage of your systems, and that your security is good enough that there's no way that anybody can get in through a customer device to access sensitive information or sensitive functions. The benefits of developing for customers transcend the customer use case, they pervade the entire organization. And it's an efficient way to not only improve your employees' life, because I guess one thing that I forgot to mention is that the conductors also use the system. If you go ask a conductor today whether a train is running late, whether you're going to make your connection, he's not going to pull out this legacy technology. He's going to pull out his cell phone out of his pocket and use his own personal cell phone, because the technology is so good and the use cases are so good that he doesn't need to access any sort of special information. It's there for everybody. Now, there are obviously cases in which you're not going to be developing for the entire world, but I would urge you, when you're thinking about the third platform, and you're thinking about leapfrogging ahead and not being stuck in the same situation that a mainframe provider was when the internet came out, if you really want to be at the forefront of this technology, think about how you can make your capabilities and your content and your information available to the widest possible audience. Figure out what the principles are behind it. Figure out what you need to change in your own organization in terms of support, in terms of process, and you'll find that things become much more efficient, and you'll find that you're leading the process instead of catching up to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Hicks.